Let's get something straight. I'm not here to talk about sex in the way that most people do. I'm here to talk about the truth behind it and what every high performing man can learn from it. Because if you are a high performing man, I can almost guarantee this. Your relationship with sex mirrors your relationship with the rest of your life. Because if you chase instant gratification in the bedroom, you're going to chase it in business. If you need the validation from a woman for you to feel powerful, then that means you lack that internal power and that self-belief. And if you can't control your impulses, you're never going to be able to control your outcomes. Let me say that again. If you can't control your impulses, you'll never control your outcomes, because sex isn't just a physical act, it's an energy exchange. And how you manage that energy determines how you're going to show up in every single area of your life. Because yeah, you can have £1 million in the bank. A lot of the men that I work with are high six-figure earners. You can have a six-pack, drive a supercar, drive any car. But if you're still ruled and controlled by lust, then you're not a man in control. You're just a man enslaved by his instincts. And that's not power. That's just weakness disguised as indulgence. Let me say it again. That's not power. That's weakness disguised as indulgence. Because sex is literally a mirror for how you live your life. And here's what most men never realize. The way you approach sex is a direct reflection of your inner alignment. Because if you're restless in your mind, you're going to be restless in your body. If you're craving constant stimulation and you need it, you feel like I've got to just get it out, otherwise I can't feel relaxed. And that means you're trying to escape from your own stillness. Just think about it. How many men chase hookups, women, porn, escorts, not because they even want connection, but because they can't sit in their own silence and they think busting a nut's going to make them feel good for just a split second. They can't handle themselves, so they seek escape and they call it pleasure, when in reality it's sedation. And if you live that way, you're going to lose your edge, you're going to lose your drive, you're going to lose your clarity. Because your energy, the very essence that fuels creation, focus, achievement, is just leaking through indulgence. It's not even about abstinence or monk mode forever. It's about control and about mastery. Because I'm not preaching from a high horse. I love sex as much as the next man. Because when a man masters his sexual energy, he masters his very life force. He becomes dangerous in all the best ways. Because he's not out chasing women, but because he doesn't need to. He radiates power, so instead of seeking it, he attracts it. He magnetizes it instead of chasing it and constantly chasing it, throwing money and trying to do anything he can to get it, moving with intent instead of impulse. And that's alignment. And that's masculine power in its purest form. Think about true high-performing masculine men. They ain't desperate for women. Women are desperate for them to be part of their life. And that's the energy exchange. And how I'm going to break it down. Every time you have sex, you're not just sharing bodies. You're sharing your energy. So if you sleep with someone whose energy is chaotic, anxious, bitter, stressed out, you absorb some of that. And I'm sure you can relate and think of people that you've had sex with in the past that's not made you feel good afterwards. You might feel drained after, or suddenly disconnected from your goals that felt so clear before, or you start thinking in ways that just aren't like you. That is not a coincidence. Let me say it again. That is not a coincidence, because sex at its core is creation energy. That same energy that creates life also fuels your ideas, your mission and your drive. And when you waste it on temporary highs, you rob yourself of long-term power. Let me say it again. When you ruin yourself chasing temporary highs, you kill your long-term power. Most men will never experience what it feels like to be able to channel that energy, that life-giving energy, to use it as fuel for business, focus, creativity, and self-development and growth, because they're too busy chasing the next hit, the next bit of validation, the next escape. But when you learn to control that energy, to delay that release, to hold the presence and to focus it, you unlock a level of drive that most men will never even touch or even be able to comprehend. That's the same energy that's behind your purpose, behind your work ethic, behind your vision. Because sex transmutation isn't some mystical practice. It's very, very, very practical. And it's about taking that energy that normally fuels your urges and your desperation for sex and redirecting it into creation, into growth, into self-development, into building your business, into becoming physically dominant, into becoming emotionally composed. And that's what separates men who waste their energy from men who wield it and use their energy to create, to grow, to build empires, to become the best, most unfuckwithable version of himself. And it's really about the power of restraint. Because if you can't say no to sex, you can't say no to distractions. It's as simple as that. So you've got to start being able to say no to them distractions, them short-term fixes, and focus on the bigger picture. Because the man who can control his sexual energy can control his entire life. Because that restraint, that ability to delay gratification builds a mental fortress. You're in control of your mind. It rewires your dopamine system. It makes you calmer under pressure, more present in conversation, and infinitely more magnetic. Because when you're chasing in life, what happens when you chase someone? It runs away. It's about becoming magnetic. When you're not ruled by impulse, you walk different, you look different, you command attention differently. And that's why women can feel it when a man's in control of himself. And it's not arrogance, it's authority. Let me just say it again. Some people say it's arrogance, when in reality, it's authority. And that same authority is what makes a leader unstoppable. But let's be clear, restraint isn't repression. It's actually redirection, realignment. It's not about denying your desires. It's about learning to be able to use them for the greater power. Because sexual energy is life energy. It gives life. That's how babies are created. And if you kill it, you lose vitality. If you can't control it, if you can learn to control it, you're going to gain command of your mind in a way that you never actually thought was possible. Because it all comes back to sex and presence. Because here's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. Your ability to be fully present during sex mirrors your ability to be fully present in life. Because I've had sex before where I'm fully locked in the moment, and I've had ones where I'm not even in it. I'm thinking about what's going on tomorrow, other things in life. Most men aren't even there, not mentally anyway. Their mind's elsewhere, thinking about performance, distracted by work, bills to pay, or fantasizing about something else entirely. And that same restlessness, it shows up absolutely everywhere, in business meetings, in workouts, in relationships. You might be there in person, but you're not there in spirit. And they're never there in the moment. And then they wonder why they feel disconnected, wonder why they feel anxious, they wonder why they feel unfulfilled. Because presence is power. And sex is one of the most unbelievable training grounds for it. Because if you can be still, focused, and connected in that moment, if you can feel instead of just think, you start carrying that same calm authority into every other single area of your life. And you start becoming truly unfuckwithable in sales calls, in leadership, when doing public speaking, in conflict, in life. Mastering presence in intimacy teaches you how to slow time down when everything else feels fast and really take in the moment. It's about emotional leadership over yourself. And I promise you, that is a rare attribute in men, especially in this day and age. Which leads me on to the connection between sex and success. Because let's talk about the link between your performance in bed and your performance in life. And this is something that you won't hear many people talk about on YouTube, because it's a bit of a taboo subject. Because when you're aligned mentally, physically and emotionally, your sex life reflects it. Because you're confident, grounded and assertive. You start giving, not just taking. You start connecting, not just consuming. Creating, not just consuming as well. Because you're not trying to prove anything, because you already know who you are. The whole world knows who you are because you know who you are. But when you're unaligned, your health starts becoming off. Your mind's scattered. Your emotions feel all chaotic, overwhelmed and anxious. You might still be having sex, but it's empty. It doesn't feel good. It feels good in the moment, but it doesn't light your soul up. It just becomes another way to feel temporary control over yourself. Another high to distract from all the lows of life. Because high performers fall into this trap constantly. They chase external success to feel validated. They chase sexual conquest for the same reason. Different arena, same pattern. That's why so many men hit a point in their lives where they've got everything that they thought they ever wanted. Nice job, nice house, family, money, status, access, and still feel hollow. I have men come to me earning 6 figures a year and they say they feel depressed. Life's just shit. Because you can't fill an internal void with external pleasure. It never works, not for more than a moment. Because fulfillment comes from integration. When you drive, your discipline and your desires are aligned. That's when you finally stop chasing and start creating. That's the essence of becoming unfuckwithable. And everything I do with men is about helping them become the most unfuckwithable version of themselves. But it's not just about becoming masculine, because here's a bit of a feminine reflection on it. Because here's the bit that most men don't want to hear or they can't hear. The way women respond to you sexually is feedback. Not validation, but feedback. Because if she's cold, disconnected, or not drawn to you, you have to force it onto her. That's not about her. That's about your energy and the way you're portraying yourself, delivering yourself to the world. Because a woman's feminine energy thrives on leadership, confidence, emotional security. So if you're stressed, distracted, or needy, she feels it instantly. She doesn't follow words, she follows energy. So when you're aligned, calm, clear, she relaxes. When you're chaotic, reactive, or trying to prove something, then she resists. That's why mastering your inner world makes makes you magnetic externally, because you stop trying to convince and you start commanding. And this isn't just about romantic relationships. This applies to business, because everything in life, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So this is synergistic across your relationships, across sex, across business, because energy is contagious. If people feel your presence, they trust you. If they feel your chaos and your overwhelm and your stress and your anxiety and your negative energy, then they're going to pull back. And here's the link to alignment, because you know everything I do is about alignment across the 3 M's. Mindset, movement, and money. Because sex touches every one of them in its own unique way and all together as well. The first M is mindset. Because if your thinking is reactive and obsessive, then your sex life will be exactly the same, compulsive and empty. But when you learn to control your thoughts, you reclaim your desire. And which leads me on to the second M, which is movement. Your physical health, it dictates your energy. Because if your body's inflamed, tense, overweight, sluggish, you'll feel disconnected from pleasure. You can't feel it. But when you train, move, and fuel your body properly, everything improves. Your testosterone's high. You feel great. The third M's money, because money is just another form of energy. How you chase it reflects how you chase women. If you're impatient, emotional, or strategic and calm, because when you master both, abundance starts flowing without force. Goes back to being magnetic. That's alignment. That's when all 3 M's feed into each other. You become grounded, powerful, magnetic. It all feeds back to becoming magnetic, because you're no longer chasing. You're attracting. You're drawing it into you, because you're not seeking pleasure. You're living from purpose. And that's exactly what real success feels like. It doesn't have to be an uphill struggle on a constant hamster wheel. You build yourself to the point where you're magnetic for all the opportunities, the people you need. And most men will never understand this. They'll keep chasing temporary highs, money, women, validation, and then wonder why they still feel empty. But luckily, you're not most men. You've clicked on this video in the first place. You've got this far into the video, so you're different to most men. You're here because something inside you knows there's more. That alignment isn't just about success. It's about self-command. Because if you can master your urges and you can master your emotions, then you'll be different from 99% of the men out there. And if you can master your emotions, you can master your decisions. If you can master your decisions, you can build a life that gives you freedom, love, power, and peace all at once. These things aren't different from each other. They're all part of the same puzzle. Sex, when understood properly, is a mirror of that mastery. It shows you whether you're in control or you're being controlled, whether you're creating from power or reacting from pain. So here's the challenge for you. Next time you feel an impulse, pause. Ask yourself, is this about me being in alignment, or am I trying to escape myself and escape this present moment? If you can answer that honestly, then you're already halfway there. Because when a man lives from alignment, he doesn't need to chase highs. He becomes a permanent walking high for himself and for everybody that interacts with him. That's when you stop living like everybody else, the average Joe, and struggling through life, and start becoming unfuckwithable. So if you want a step-by-step blueprint for how you can build this into your life, click the link in the description. It's the alignment blueprint, the step-by-step guide that's helped me change my life and help hundreds of men to do the same. All my private clients use this, and they say, I can't believe how simple it is and how close I've been living to living the perfect life. Once you get these last pieces of the puzzle working together, you'll be amazed at how it all comes together. So click the links in the description, and I'll see you in the next video. Let's go.